Have you ever made a mistake that refused to stay in the past? Not just any mistake, something that followed you everywhere, something that lived inside your name, your reputation, your identity. Maybe it was a failure at work, a betrayal of trust, a moment of weakness that everyone witnessed. You wake up every morning promising yourself that today will be different, but deep down, there's a voice that whispers, they know who you are, and no matter how hard you try to move forward, your past keeps pulling you backward. Here's the brutal truth most people never realize. Your past doesn't destroy you. Your reaction to it does. But what happens when two people make the same mistake and only one of them becomes free? This is not just a story. This is a mirror. And before this ends, you may never see yourself the same way again. Chapter 1. The life that looked normal from the outside. His name was Karna. If you saw him from the outside, you'd never think anything was wrong. He had a job at a mid-sized consulting firm, a phone full of contacts, social media accounts filled with smiles, birthdays, and filtered happiness. He looked normal. He looked fine. But you know how that works, don't you? Because maybe you've done the same thing, smiled in photos while hiding battles no one could see. Every morning, Karna woke up at 7 a.m. The alarm rang. He stared at the ceiling for exactly 3 minutes, not moving, not thinking, just existing in that gray space between sleep and reality. Then he'd pick up his phone, notifications, emails, messages. But none of it made him feel alive. He went to work, spoke when needed, laughed when expected, returned home, ordered dinner, scrolled through his phone until his eyes burned. Then slept, day after day, week after week, year after year. From the outside, everything looked stable, but inside, something was slowly breaking, like a glass with a hairline fracture, waiting for the right pressure to shatter completely. Because there was something no one knew, something he could never erase, something that changed how the world saw him, and more dangerously, how he saw himself. Chapter 2. What he did. 3 years earlier, Karna had made a choice that would define the next chapter of his life. He was working on a major client presentation, one that could secure his promotion and a significant raise. The pressure was crushing. His younger brother's college fees were overdue. His father needed a medical procedure the family couldn't afford. Meanwhile, his friends were buying apartments and posting vacation photos from Bali. He felt invisible, replaceable, forgettable. So when he discovered that a colleague had left confidential client data unsecured on a shared drive, he made a decision. He took that data, pricing strategies, competitor analysis, proprietary research, and used it to make his own presentation shine. He told himself it was temporary, that he'd earned it through years of hard work. That everyone cut corners sometimes. His presentation was flawless. The client was impressed. His boss called it exceptional work. For 2 weeks, he felt like he'd finally made it. Then the audit came. Digital footprints don't lie. The timestamps, the file access logs, the suddenly sophisticated insights that didn't match his previous work, it all pointed to one person. The truth exposed him publicly, suddenly, brutally. People who once respected him stopped trusting him. People who once smiled at him avoided eye contact in the hallway. Conversations died when he entered the room. Whispers replaced greetings. He wasn't fired. The company decided that would create legal complications. Instead, he was moved to a different team, stripped of his responsibilities, and given work that felt designed to make him quit. He became a label, not a person. Not Karna, just that guy who stole data. And the worst part wasn't what others said. It was what he started saying to himself. I ruined everything. I am fundamentally dishonest. I will never recover from this. Every day that voice grew louder. Chapter 3. The breaking point. The moment everything shattered came on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Nothing dramatic, no explosion, no confrontation, just silence. Karna was in the office pantry, standing behind a tall storage cabinet, making coffee. 2 colleagues walked in, people he'd once considered friends. They didn't see him, but he heard them. Just be careful around him, okay? Yeah, I wouldn't trust him with anything important. People like that don't change. It's who they are. 3 simple sentences, but they destroyed something fundamental inside him, because in that moment, he realized something terrifying. It didn't matter how much time had passed. It didn't matter how much he regretted it. In their minds, he would always be the same person, always the mistake, always the failure, always frozen in that worst moment. That night, he stood in front of his bathroom mirror for 20 minutes. His reflection looked like a stranger, hollow eyes, shoulders curved inward, a posture that screamed defeat. He asked himself a question most people are too afraid to ask. Is this who I am now? Is this permanent? He didn't know the answer, and that uncertainty was more terrifying than any certainty could have been. Chapter 4, The Descent. What happened next was slow and silent, the kind of collapse that happens beneath the surface, where no one can see it. Karna started withdrawing. He stopped attending team lunches, declined after-work drinks, avoided conversations that went beyond surface pleasantries. But here's what most people don't understand about shame. You're not just avoiding other people, you're avoiding yourself. He stopped applying for new positions, because what was the point? His reputation would follow him. He stopped pursuing projects because failure now felt permanent, heavy, final. He even stopped calling his old friends because he couldn't bear the questions about how work was going. He became a spectator in his own life, watching from behind glass as others grew, celebrated, moved forward. Promotions, marriages, new beginnings. While he remained frozen, not because he lacked ability, but because he lacked something more fundamental, the belief that he deserved a second chance. And this is how most dreams actually die. Not loudly, with dramatic failures, but silently, through quiet surrender, he began accepting a dangerous lie. This is my identity now. And once you accept that lie, you stop fighting, you stop growing, you stop living. You only exist moving through days, like a ghost haunting your own life. Chapter 5, The Darkest Hour. 8 months after the incident, Karna found himself sitting alone on a bench in a small park near his apartment. It was 7 p.m. on a Friday. Around him, the world moved forward, couples walking hand in hand, children playing, groups of friends laughing, on their way to dinner, and he felt completely invisible, disconnected, lost. That's when the realization hit him like a physical blow. He wasn't running from other people, he was running from himself, because wherever he went, his mind followed, his memories followed, his guilt followed, like a shadow he couldn't escape. You can change cities, you can change jobs, you can change your entire environment, but you cannot escape your own mind. For months he'd been asking the wrong question. How do I escape this? Now, sitting on that bench as the sun set and the air grew cold, he asked a different question, one that felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. Do I even deserve to escape this? He sat there for 3 hours, long after the park emptied and the streetlights came on, in silence. In truth, in pain, and somewhere in that darkness, something shifted. Not hope, he wasn't ready for hope yet, but something smaller, something more dangerous. A question, is this really how my story ends? Chapter 6, The Turning Point. The answer didn't come from outside. No mentor appeared with perfect wisdom. No sudden revelation struck like lightning. Instead, it came as a quiet, brutal, uncomfortable truth that emerged slowly over the following days. His past was real. His mistake was real. The hurt he'd caused was real. But his future, that was still unwritten. He understood something that most people never grasp. Running away from your past strengthens it. Facing it weakens it. So he stopped trying to erase what he'd done. He stopped waiting for people to forget. He stopped hoping to wake up one day and find that it had all been a bad dream. Instead, he made a different choice. Not an emotional one, not a dramatic declaration, but a quiet, simple, final decision. I will become someone my past cannot recognize. Not for others, not to prove anything to the colleagues who whispered, not even to restore his reputation. For himself, to look in the mirror and recognize the person staring back. And with that decision, everything changed. Not instantly, but irreversibly. Chapter 7, The Transformation. This time for real. Karna began rebuilding his life through a principle that sounds simple, but requires everything, radical consistency, in small actions. He started by doing something that terrified him. He went to his manager and asked for the most tedious, unglamorous project available: data cleanup. The kind of work nobody wants. The kind that would never lead to recognition. His manager was confused but assigned it to him. For 3 months, Karna did that work with an intensity that seemed insane for such a mundane task. He didn't just clean the data, he restructured it, documented it, created systems so the next person wouldn't struggle. He worked nights and weekends, not because anyone asked, but because he needed to prove something to himself. When he finished, he didn't announce it. He simply moved to the next unglamorous task, then the next one, and the next. 6 months in, something unexpected happened. A senior analyst's project fell apart because of corrupted data. The team was in crisis mode. Someone remembered. Karna cleaned up that database. Maybe he can help. He worked 70 hours that week fixing it. When they thanked him, he just nodded and went back to his desk. But here's what was really happening. Beneath the surface, he was building a new identity. One small action at a time. He started showing up 15 minutes early to meetings, not to impress anyone, to be genuinely prepared. He began volunteering to help colleagues with their projects, expecting nothing in return. When someone made a mistake, he covered for them quietly, without keeping score. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. Months became years. The transformation wasn't linear. There were setbacks. Days when the old shame came flooding back. Moments when he saw that look in someone's eyes. The one that said, "I still remember," and felt like giving up, and felt like giving up. But he'd made a promise to himself, and slowly, something shifted. People started noticing, not his words, but his actions, his reliability, his consistency, his integrity. Trust didn't return suddenly with apologies and declarations. It returned quietly, like dawn, through accumulated proof. A year and a half after his decision to change, a junior colleague asked him to review her presentation. She said something that stopped him cold. "I know you'll be honest with me." That word, honest, coming from someone who hadn't even known him, during his worst moment. Chapter 8. The validation 3 years after the incident. Something unexpected happened. A new employee joined the company, a young analyst, sharp and curious, full of questions about how things worked. One day, he approached a senior colleague and asked, "I keep hearing Karna's name come up in meetings. Why do people go to him for advice?" The senior colleague, one of the same people who'd whispered in the pantry years ago, paused, then smiled. "It's actually a long story, but honestly, he's one of the most reliable people here. When Karna says he'll do something, it gets done. And he'll tell you the truth even when it's uncomfortable. No mention of the mistake. No mention of the data theft. No mention of the darkest chapter of his life. Because that chapter, while not erased, no longer defined him. His actions had written new chapters. Longer chapters. More honest chapters. The mark he'd once seen as a permanent stain, a symbol of shame and failure, had transformed into something else entirely. Not because it disappeared, but because he became bigger than it. That evening, Karna stood in front of his bathroom mirror again. Same mirror, same apartment, but a different man stared back. For the first time in 3 years, he looked at his reflection and felt something he'd forgotten existed. Peace. Final lesson. This is about you. Everything I've told you about Karna is true. But here's what's more important. This story isn't really about him. It's about the lie you might be believing right now. The lie that says, "I am my worst moment." The lie that whispers, "I've ruined everything." The lie that insists, "People like me don't get second chances." Listen carefully, because this is the truth. Your past does not decide your future. Your mistakes do not decide your identity. Your lowest moment does not decide your final destination. What decides your future is what you do next. Not tomorrow, not someday. Right now, in this moment. Most people run from their past, hoping time or distance will heal it. But the strongest people do something different. They transform it. They turn shame into discipline, pain into strength, failure into fuel. You are not your worst moment. You are your next decision. And the moment you stop running from who you were is the moment you start becoming who you're meant to be. Your past is not your prison. It's your training ground, and your transformation can begin right now. Not when people forgive you, not when you feel ready, not when the circumstances are perfect. Now, because the person you're going to become is waiting for you to start. If this story made you feel something, I want to know, what's the one mistake from your past that you're ready to outgrow? Share it in the comments, not for judgment, but for solidarity. You're not alone in this. Hit like if you believe people deserve second chances, including yourself. And share this with someone who needs to hear that their worst moment doesn't get to write their final chapter. Subscribe for more stories that remind you you're stronger than you think, and your story isn't over yet.